As we're well aware, we live in a world of groups: family, social, work, sport, politics, nationalities, religions, and others. And for example, we simply then recognize the Gadigal people. That's a group, a historic group, which is still living. The study of various groups is vast and complex, and this talk this morning can only be an overview, but I hope to have picked out some scientific patterns which are clearly discernible. So there's a lot of research also on groups, though. The study of social psychology of groups provided strong foundations and was the origin of the clinical understandings of the therapeutic group process. So in a previous life, I majored in American and European history, and in the 19th century. And one of the great takeaways was that in the 19th century, you saw the emergence of the large populations, and you saw in almost every year some form of revolution in many European countries. This created a good deal of interest and concern in commentators at the time, and we'll come to this in a minute. But we're working specifically in the clinical area, where aspects of these group processes, family, work, social, etc., are also active. And so all of our different subgroups bring their dynamic into our clinical area in different ways. Group dynamics as a study and a practice clinically had some prominence in the 60s and 80s mental health work in the West and in Australia and New South Wales. But this decreased in the late 80s as hospital beds closed, finance was community directed, and reliance on medication and individual CBT and DBT increased. Perhaps there's a renewed interest in group dynamics now, both at the social psychology and the clinical level. There are plenty of people in different countries, and particularly in the US, experts looking at social psychology of the group. And in the hospital that I currently work, Gordon Private Hospital, there's a renewed interest and demand from patients for group activity. So this is a complex, rich body of group dynamics knowledge. It's critical for clinicians, but it's also essentially valuable by bodies, seen as valuable by bodies such as NASA. In summary then, what are the fundamental principles in looking at the whole vast, complex field of group dynamics? Firstly, groups are real. They are real, and they are real in their effects, and they are powerful in their effects. Next, the dynamic processes, the intra-group processes, are also very real. They are powerful in their effects on individuals and on the life of the group. Thirdly, group dynamics, as I said, generally focuses on observable structure and behavior. However, the unconscious group process is very real. And the catch here is that if we don't have enough understanding and alertness to unconscious group process, whether we identify ourselves with psychoanalysis or psychodynamics or Freud or whoever, if we don't have enough understanding of unconscious processes and pick up the hints, then unconscious negative processes can take over. And Lawrence and others talked about, for example, rational madness and psychotic anxieties, which can become dominant. I think we can see that sort of thing in conspiracy theory in different social groups in different countries. So a study of group processes, both to understand the functional process and to understand what's dysfunctional, is really essential for optimum understanding and performance in a group interaction, particularly if we're running clinical work. Now we come to part two then, the key theorists. And these theorists emerged from the late 19th century into the 20th century. And as I said earlier, history and the politics of history with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, with social movements, with opposition to monarchy, starting perhaps most strikingly in the French Revolution, really became a theme running through the 19th century, and people such as Le Bon took great interest in this. Clearly, group dynamics is a vast and complex field. The term refers to both the group process and the scientific research of the group process. And there are major theorists that we've looked at, developed multiple overlapping models of groups of all sizes and goals. Le Bon described social psychology of groups and mass events. So this is back 1895. Freud, 1922, described unconscious libidinal bonds around a parental ego ideal. Barino invented psychodrama and group psychotherapy. Lewin was the first to study groups scientifically. And then we have people forming models and dimensions. Schutz, inclusion, control, and affection. Tuckland's model, forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning and mourning. Peck, pseudo-community, chaos, emptiness, and true community. Yalom, model curative factors in group therapy. Bion, derived from his boarding school and World War I experiences, then psychoanalytic training, model of group process in the work group, an unconscious basic assumptions group. Freudian psychology, as well as self-psychology, object relations, are all ways of perceiving group process. Current research in, say, the formation of teams such as NASA, which is absolutely critical, has become prominent. Multiple therapeutic groups, as listed through this talk in hospitals, etc., are currently in use. And the purest psychoanalytic Bion Tavistock practice is less common, but when it's done, it's uniquely powerful. But overall, an understanding of empirical findings, of which there are plenty, may be best supported by an understanding of the unconscious processes that affect groups of any kind. And a lot of this understanding comes from actual personal training and experience that one has to have when one works in different sorts of groups, be they hospital groups, be they Ballant groups, be they group therapy, in the work of people like Patrick Lemaire that one of you has mentioned. All of this comes from training experience for the facilitator.